Welcome to the Tony Robbins Podcast. Today, we're kicking off a series of episodes that are all about breaking through limitations and unleashing the power you have within yourself to create real, lasting change in your life. If that language sounds familiar to you, it's probably because you've attended Unleash the Power Within. UPW is a 3.5-day event with Tony Robbins that's offered multiple times a year, both in the US and abroad. It's not like school or a business conference. It's certainly not like a typical personal growth seminar. It's a full-blown experience that some have likened to a rock concert or an intense therapy session. Whatever it is you want to call it, it's epic. And for millions of people, it has been literally life-changing. Did you know, for instance, that some of your deeply held beliefs are actually limiting you, holding you back, not pushing you forward? Or that you cannot just control your emotions, you can harness their power and take massive action. These are just some of the things that you learn at UPW and some of the topics that Tony delves into. We'll be exploring a lot of them in this podcast. Today on the show, we're excited to have the renowned author, presenter, and ultimate performance specialist, Joseph McClendon III, to talk about one of the most fascinating strategies you learn at UPW. It's called the Ultimate Success Formula. The Ultimate Success Formula is a 4-step process that helps you take massive action to get what you really want. It could be a dramatic change in your own business, kickstarting a new career, or a much-needed step you need to take in your relationship. Maybe you're finally committing to shedding extra pounds, maintaining a consistent level of strength and vitality. Chances are you know what it is. It's that one thing you know you just need to do, or at least do better than you are doing it today. And this is the system you can use to achieve that goal that you have. What's really cool about it is that you don't have to wait. You can really start using it right now, at this exact moment. Also, since the next UPW offered in the US is right around the corner, we're going to be announcing a special offer for you to attend the San Jose event, which this year is November 10th through the 13th. So listen carefully for that. And now, here's Joseph with his Ultimate Success Formula. Hi, this is Annie Jorg, and I am here at UPW, Unleash the Power Within, in Dallas with Joseph McClendon III. Joseph is by profession a psychologist. By trade, he's an ultimate performance specialist. And here he's the senior head trainer who works with Tony on stage, facilitating large events just like this one. Joseph actually just came off stage. We're at day 2. Welcome, Joseph, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I'd love to start maybe with just an idea of how you first started becoming involved with Tony.
Well, I became involved with him in the beginning, much like other people do as well, or most people do. I went to a seminar, but this was back in the olden days, back in 1985, actually.
So are you really going to give that away?
Yeah. I was 8 years old. No, I was... And how I happened into that, it was a very, very low point in my life. Actually, I was doing well financially. I had a lot of things going for me in my life, but I had a passion that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a recording artist. And I knew I was good enough to do it, but I was afraid to quit my job. And I had programming from childhood that you had to keep a job and you had to stay in school. And even though I had already graduated from college and I'd already had a degree and I had all those things, I was still working my job. I was playing in bands to support my music, having a relationship with my girlfriend, and I had also purchased I actually had purchased in a year and a half time 26 houses because I had 13 of them left because I went to a seminar and learned how to buy houses for money down with the express reason that if I had these houses, then I could get residual income off of those so I could quit my job and then I could pursue my music. Mm-hmm. But when I had all these houses, had the income coming in from them, but my attitude was 13 houses, they were worth about $100,000 each. My attitude was, I'm $1.3 million in debt. I hate my life. I'm not doing my passion. And I freaked out. I was getting the money and I still couldn't quit my job and I didn't know why. And so just by luck, a friend of mine said, well, I've heard about this guy that can help you with this stuff. And he told me his name, but I didn't pay attention to it. And he said, you should go to the seminar. And I go, I already went to one seminar and look at what happened to me, because that was the only seminar I'd gone to. And so I went to Los Angeles, and I went to, in those days, this UPW was called the Mind Revolution. Tony was maybe 28, 29 years old, I think. Wow. And I went there, And I was in the back of the room, and I was depressed, and I was just out of it. And everybody else around was jumping around and having a good time and partying, and there was only maybe 500 people, if that many. And I just wasn't into it. And I thought, I'm out of here. I'm going to leave because I'm just not into it. And one of the staff, if you will, came up, big guy, started talking to me, and he says, "Listen, how you doing? You look like you're troubled." And I said, "Well, quite honestly, this, and I started regurgitating my story to him. But he was really kind, and he was helpful. And I was thinking to myself, wow, this Tony guy really trains his staff well. Because this guy was giving me some suggestions, and he was telling me, well, you ought to hang around because, Tony will really help you with stuff. And Tony is an amazing, amazing guy, and it'll help you with stuff. And so he helped me and convinced me to stay, and I did. And then at one point he goes, and then one of the greatest things is when you do the firewalk. And I go, the what? Because I didn't know anything about it. He goes, yeah, when you do the firewalk. And I go, what do you mean the firewalk? And he goes, yeah. And his eyes get really big, and he goes, at the end of this, we're going to lay out, 15 feet of hot coals, and we're going to walk on them. Now, I was raised in church, and I automatically thought, well, Satan's got to be in there somewhere. Yeah. I'm not doing this. And then it flipped again, and then it's like, I'm out of here. As soon as this guy's gone, I'm out of here. And he saw that in him, and he goes, don't worry about it. It has nothing to do with religion, it has nothing to do with that. It's just, blah, blah, blah. And you don't have to do it. You just observe, but you'll get much value out of it. And I thought, okay. Well, and then I decided to stay again. Then he says, well, I got to go because I got some work to do. And he turns around to walk away, and then he stops about 5 feet away, and he turns around and he goes, you seem like a really nice guy. Can I have your phone number? And at the time, now this is 1985, I thought to myself, now what? Yeah. And I actually thought this was somebody hitting on me. Swear to God.
Fair enough.
And I thought, and he kind of saw that I wasn't really comfortable with that. And he goes, we'll talk later. And he leaves. He said, goes away. And then the seminar starts, all the dancing and all the stuff going on. And I'm standing there still sort of half 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And Tony's wife gets on the stage, and she talks about how she was sitting where we were at the time, and frustrated and all that stuff. And then Tony came out, and then she walked on the fire, and it changed her life so much that she married the guy. Ladies and gentlemen, here's my guy. Here's my husband, Tony Robbins. And Tony came out, and it was the guy that was talking to me.
Oh,
it was Tony. It wasn't staff at all. It was Tony. And
wow.
And then he had me at that, and of course I learned. I'm sorry.
Straight up, he asked for your number straight up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was just trying to be a friend. It was me freaking out, right?
Yeah.
And so I stayed, and the rest is history. It literally and I only did the one day, by the way. I didn't do the next UPW for several months, but just from what I learned from that one day, changed my life. I went back, and literally within a couple of weeks, I quit my job. I just, went through a bunch of changes in my life. I did wind up selling 90% of all those homes, and I moved to Los Angeles. I did get a recording deal with CBS Records a couple years later, and grew from there. And then, I guess it was in '90, CBS, the company that I was with, sold to Sony, and I got kind of locked in a position that I didn't want to. And my mom became very, very ill, and I had to take care of her as well. And it was at that stage that I made the decision to switch careers. And I had, in between that time, Tony and I were friends, and I would go to the workshops, and he asked me to step in because of my background in psychology and work with some of the trainers and so on and so forth. So I became the head trainer, training the trainers and working with the trainers. And then he and I wrote our first book together. It became a bestseller in 86. Mm-hmm. 96, forgive me, 96. And then since then, we grew and I became the senior head trainer. And now I have the unbelievable honor, the privilege of working with Tony on stage and sharing his message and helping people change lives.
Great. So I want to talk a little bit about what you spoke about today, day 2, mm-hmm. The ultimate success formula. Can you explain a little bit about
Absolutely, sure.
what that is, where it comes from?
Actually, that was day number 1. We extended into today. Day number 1 was, that was day number 2. Tony does day number 1. And day number, that is really what shifted my life when I told you back there, was learning this formula. And the ultimate success formula, as we jokingly say, but it's the truth, it's how to get whatever you want in life. And it is a strategy to organize it's a process of organizing all of the steps that you can, should, would take to get what you want. And ironically, they're the things that we've always done, but we do them unconsciously. I'll tell you what they are in a second, but throughout our lives, anything that we've ever desired, that we wanted, that we finally got, if you look back, all these steps were in place in some way, with regard to an emotion, in regard to the actions that we took. And the steps they're really quite simple, not necessarily easy, but they're definitely simple. Step number one is always to know your outcome, meaning know what you want and have as much detail about that thing as possible.
But that sounds so simple, but it's not.
Yes and no. It's simple, not necessarily easy, because it requires you to dig deep inside yourself. Yeah. It requires you to do some research. It requires you to look at the thing that you want. And sometimes things come up that you don't like. Sometimes things come up that make you uncomfortable. Yeah. But obviously, through the process, you have to learn how to deal with those things. But I always say, I grew up in a place called Lancaster, California. And there, it's desert, it's flat. It's where they used to land the space shuttle, out in Edwards Air Force Base. And it's flat, and you could drive for miles and miles once you got out of town with no stop signs. And 2 or 3, 4 or 5 times a year, people would lose control of their car and run into telephone poles. And it would floor me. I'd go, a telephone pole is only this wide. Yeah. And they're 20 yards in between each other. Why do people hit the poles? And if they lived, they always said the same thing. I didn't want to hit the pole. The last thing I remember was the pole. And so it's because of what they're looking at. Our bodies respond to whatever they're looking at. They drive into the pole, even though they don't want to do it. What they're focused on, that becomes their outcome, and their body drives into it. So I use that as an example, or as a metaphor, if you will. It's the same for the thing that you want. If you get clear on your outcome, what it is that you want, and you focus on that, and then we have processes that you learn at the UPW of how to refocus yourself back on that thing and get clear on exactly what that is, sure. Then your body, much like driving into the pole, will do whatever it takes to make that happen. And then it becomes automatic with you. And once that happens, then you don't have to, force yourself to do it. That is when it becomes easy.
A lot of people, too, think it's an intellectual process, but, where focus goes, energy flows. It's really a full body experience.
Absolutely. Right? It really is. I mean, it's such a great point because, people say mind, body, and spirit. Yeah, it is. Everything's connected. It's all together. So as the mind thinks, and the thought process is just whatever we imagine and whatever we say. That's the entire thought process, not to oversimplify it. So if you're looking at something and saying these words, then and that repetition with the energy that goes into it, that becomes your reality, and you go after it. You don't have to think about how you drive a car when you get in the car, but you did when you first learned. You had to focus on some things, and you did it enough times, so pretty soon it became natural. Sure.
Yeah, but that's a painful process in itself, is getting out of autopilot, right? We live in our heads all day. We're so used to doing things so easily that getting out of your comfort zone to that extent is very, very uncomfortable.
Very well put. And that's one of the great things that Tony teaches, and he's such a master at it, is how to get out of that comfort zone, how to break that pattern. And not just intellectually, but do it in a way that becomes, I call it, your default. He's just a master at teaching people to do that as well.
So anything else about the success formula?
Oh, sure. Step number 2
sure.
is to know your reasons why. Why human beings do amazing things when they have a strong enough reason why. Jim Rohn used to say that hows come second, whys come first. People do things that are unresourceful, smoke cigarettes and, drink alcohol and do things like that. Yeah. But they have a reason why, and their why is so strong inside of them. So what we help people do at the UPW as well is to get in touch with their reason why. People say, well, I want to make more money. But they don't want to just make more money. The reason that they want to make more money is so that they can, have a better lifestyle, or they can freedom and build a financial wall around their family, send their kids to special school or whatever. But those are the things that once they realize that's where what you were talking about before, the emotion comes out. And once the emotion comes out and it's attached to that thing that you want, just like, again, I keep going back to driving into the pole, emotion is emotion, good or bad. And when you attach emotion to the thing that you're looking at, you get locked into it. They're scared when they're looking at the pole, but that's emotion, and it locks them in. So if you get somebody to say, here's what I want, and I'm focused on that, and then you cause them to pull up the emotion of why they want it, their children or security or whatever it is, then it locks them in as well.
Yeah.
That's step number 2. And again, in all this stuff, it's not just conversation we have with people. We pride ourselves on, we're going to show you something, we're going to tell you something, and then you're going to do it. So we're going to get a result at the workshop, and then give you the tools so you can have it outside of here. And of course, the third step is the one that seems obvious, but it's not the thing that people tend to know right away, and that is something called massive action. You've got to take not a little bit of action, but you got to take massive action. And that means don't just go to the gym for a week, and work out mildly. You got to go and work out like crazy while you're doing these things. But what happens is those things that are difficult in the very beginning, very, very quickly become natural, and you crave it. So that massive action starts to become the thing that you crave doing. And that's those 3 things attached together are the things that make you get up early, stay up late, do the hard stuff, and crave wanting to do those things. Once those are in place and you're doing that and you're along those roads, step number 4 is to notice what you're getting, is to see, am I getting closer to my goal or further away? Because oftentimes, just because you're taking action, things can distract you and knock you off course and make you focus on something else for maybe not as much time as you need to focus on here or more time on there. And so what happens is we get off course and we don't realize it. And if you get off course just 1 degree in the very beginning, then you'll be way off course by the time you get to where you think you're going to be. So you've got to notice what you're getting. And then if you notice what you're getting, I always say this to people, if you notice what you're getting and you're on course and you're doing great, celebrate.
Yeah, celebrate
Praise yourself, give yourself a personal high five, whatever, and go, I freaking rock, whatever it takes. And this is really important. Oh, don't get me started.
Well, I was going to say, too, because a lot of people who are here for this event and who are listening today, I mean, they consider themselves, as they should, as achievers.
Yeah.
And one thing that achievers, a lot of them have in common, is they're really hard on themselves, right? So they don't take the time to step back and acknowledge where they came from and where they're at today, even if it's not quite at their goal, and then to celebrate that.
Yeah, or I beat them up really bad on that one. I accuse them of, don't worry, I help them as well.
Yeah.
I accuse them of being what I call members of the Self-Beaters Club. And the reason I do that, and I say, I beat them up about them, is I want them to get how damaging that is to them. And then I give them the solution on that. And we play around a lot, and people get it, that, wait a minute, I have to do this. This is something that is part of my regime. And I would praise my child, even though they didn't get it right. So I need to do that to myself. And then we turn it into a ritual, if you will, that they get used to it. That they get even in there, and then they come outside of there as well, appreciating themselves and being their fan. Because that, in anything with the nervous system, and even plants, if you praise them, they grow. And so when somebody does something, even if they fail, and you go, well, at least you did something, it's a great job, then their nervous system learns, oh, wait a minute, I'm just going to do more and more of it, so they grow from there. So if they notice that they're not going or not headed in the direction that they want to, if they're off course, obviously praise yourself for having caught yourself. But then step number 5 is to change your approach. Adjust yourself to get yourself back in, because sometimes the thing that you're doing may get some results for a while, but then that starts to taper off. And some people, they hit a plateau and then they go, oh, this isn't working, and they stop. Or they're achievers. They work and effort even more and more, and they get more and more frustrated and more overwhelmed, and then they stop and they get distracted. They do something else. Instead, catch yourself and go. And we always say, get a coach, get a mentor, or something that's going to go, okay, take a deep breath, step back for a minute, let's take a look, let's assess what you've done, and let's change our approach and then move in that direction. And that's it. That's the formula. And when you do that formula, like for me, when I got that, it's like having the puzzle pieces to this magnificent puzzle. And you're able to just go, okay, whatever you want in your life. And that's what they leave the UPW with. I mean, one of the many, many things, but is that they have this system, this formula. So whatever they want in their lives, whenever they go after anything in their lives, they just go, okay, wait a minute, let me just go, okay, let me define my outcome, exactly what I want. And then let me define exactly why I'm doing this. Let me get emotional about this. And then here's the action that I'm going to take, and then we set a schedule for doing that. And then as I go up, here's my schedule for checking in and seeing how I'm doing, and here's how I'm going to adjust. You do that, life's good.
So, Joseph, one of the things that I've noticed here at UPW is that there seem to be people from all walks of life, right?
Yeah.
It's extremely diverse. There's something about the energy in the room, too, that's unbelievable. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Everybody is here to support each other. But UPW is a very individual journey,
Yes.
right? And what I was sort of wondering was, what types of people do you think are prime for this kind of event?
Great question. You're absolutely right. There are all walks of people. All religions, all races, all ages. I mean, there's kids there, there's children there, and there are also, 80, 90-year-olds here as well, and everything in between. The easy answer is it's for everybody because it's personal development, and everybody, we share the same type of nervous system. But I would say that it's prime for these types of people. Number one, achievers and people that know that, that they have already achieved a lot.